everybody. This is the second of my Freedom from Low Self Esteem webinars. So when you go online, you'll be able to see the recordings of both and compare. Welcome everybody who's turned up live. I really appreciate those who do. These days, when you have a free webinar, only about a third of people turn up. I'm actually getting a little bit more than that in some of my groups, which is very heartening. So just for now, if you wouldn't mind, just type in the chat who you are, where you're from. I recognise some of these names, so I know we've got people from Sue. I presume that's Sue from the UK. Annette, hello. Jackie. Oh, you can see, not hear. Well, I hope you're not watching while you're driving. So prefer if you were hearing, Jackie, rather than seeing when you're driving. Helen from the UK. Yeah, in my group on Wednesday as well. Gary from Melbourne, Helen from Christchurch, Colin from Melbourne. I missed Detlev up in Germany. Hi, I haven't seen you for ages, mate. Julie from Scotland. Yeah, Annette in Busselton. Fantastic. We've got people. Oh, Sue in Darwin. Okay. 54 kids on camp in Darwin. Wow. Okay. Well, hopefully we can help with that. Yeah, Eric, hi. Good to see you on the list. Annette, yeah, I know you're up in Munich. Trish in Austria. Wow, yeah, this is the Europe-friendly and a little bit Australia-friendly time. Mary Rose in Perth, just down the road from me. Rose from the Blue Mountains, a beautiful place. Oh, wow. Can't wait to get there. Oh, we've got Viviane from Switzerland as well. Okay, let's get this show moving because an hour is not very long. So, what is it? What did you say? No, 54 kids, but a quick Louis cuisine. What's Louis cuisine? Colin. Colin doesn't have the. All right. Let's move on. Just the disclaimer that we always have to do, just a reminder, this is an informational and an educational program, and this is not medical advice. The techniques that I may use will certainly be referring to the first two at the very least, set or simple energy techniques, and IEP or intention-based energy process, and provocative energy techniques. If I use those, if I do some coaching with people, although those techniques have caused impressive results for a lot of people, there's no guarantee that they will produce any particular result for any particular person, including you. So for that reason, you have to take full responsibility for your own use of these and your own physical and mental health, and consult your physician and or therapist about your use of these techniques, particularly if you're dealing with severe mental health issues. All right, said that, some quick housekeeping and ground rules for the webinar. The call is being recorded, as you were already informed, and by participating, you've already given permission to being recorded. I actually want to take live questions. There's two ways to do that. One is by typing in the chat that some of you are already doing. Hi, Steph from Scotland. Good to see you here. And then later on, I'm going to turn it on to Q&A mode where we can communicate via voice and or video. If you want to do that, you must use a headset or headphones, at least earbuds. Otherwise, there'll be a nasty echo from that. And for everybody who already knows tapping, including those who don't, start tapping, because you're going to get benefits whatever happens here if you are tapping. And obviously, you know, if you know our simple tapping approach, you can just be tapping in the background while I'm talking, while I'm working with people, and you will get the benefits of an hour's tapping regardless of what happens. Even just the fact that you've come along to a self-esteem webinar, you know, this universal concept of self-esteem that seems to be such a big issue for so many people all over the world. Just the issues that have brought you here are kind of there in the background. So if you start tapping on these points, as in EFT and SET, that will get in there and start to work on some of those issues, whether or not you address them consciously and directly. All right, so we've got a lot to work through, and my aim is to go through some of these main issues to do with self-esteem, give you a bit of a idea of my take on this stuff. Hi, Leslie from the UK. Yeah, we've got quite a few people from the UK here. So I'm going to go through some of the kind of definitions of this stuff and some of the issues to do with self-esteem. But I don't want this to be just a content-driven process, although I do have some content to go through with you. What I want this to be is a coaching experience and an opportunity for you to address some specific issues. Obviously, we don't have long, so let's get straight into it. All right, what is this thing called self-esteem? What's the, this is one of the challenges with this is that a lot of people use a lot of different terms for the same kind of thing, and there's kind of overlapping definitions. So the Wikipedia definition, I actually quite like this one, is a person's overall subjective emotional evaluation of his or her own worth. And the key word there is it's an emotional evaluation. It's something that you feel, and it's a judgment of oneself as well as an attitude that you have towards yourself. And so these are really core aspects of the definition of what self-esteem is that we weigh ourselves up, but it also leaves us with a particular feeling. And the dictionary definition is a confidence in one's own worth or abilities, and or self-respect. Now, it's like, this is the challenge with self-esteem. There's so many different terms and definitions that people use, and there's overlaps in terms of how people use them. So if you go online, you'll see, the term self-concept, self-esteem, self-worth, self-image, identity, self-confidence, self-respect, and I bet you we could come up with another 15, but these are kind of the main terms that people use when they're referring to this stuff. And often when people would refer to one, they're actually, it's technically one of the others. I'm not so concerned about that. I'm more interested in how it affects you. But let's just have a look at how some of the key people in this field have defined this. Nathaniel Brandon is actually one of the big heavy hitters in this area. He says it's the disposition to experience oneself as being competent to cope with the basic challenges of life and being worthy of happiness. Wow, as if you have to be worthy to be happy. This is one of the challenges with what this is that it kind of defines you into unhappiness. So, of course, he's talking about high self-esteem. And the National Association for Self-Esteem, they modified this slightly to say the experience of being capable of meeting life's challenges and being worthy of happiness. And this guy, Christopher Marok, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, he says that this is the description that's best withstood the test of time in terms of accuracy and comprehensiveness. Even Maslow, he puts it on his hierarchy of needs. It's like, okay, here's esteem, in between love and belonging and self-actualization is this esteem. It's like, for him, it's something that everybody needs. I'm not so sure 100% that I agree with some of this, and as you'll see. Anyway, let's start to draw out some of these distinctions, because one of the big things is people use the term self-concept to refer to the same thing as self-esteem, and it's not. So self-concept is what we think about the self. In fact, as you'll see, the self-concept is kind of our concept of ourself as a separate being from other people. And self-esteem is an evaluation that we make, as in how we feel about it. There it is again, how we feel about our negative or positive evaluations of ourselves. So let's have a look at some of those terms that I brought up a moment ago that are often used in an overlapping way to refer to things like self-esteem. So self-concept, as I just mentioned, the sense of others. Self-esteem and self-worth are always used virtually interchangeably because they're about sense of your value or worth as a person. And remember, the biggest part of that sense, is it's a felt sense often, and it relates to significant feelings. And therefore, as you'll know, that's why the tapping is so fantastic for this. And as we get on, I'm going to hopefully move into the tapping as well as my new intention-based energy process, IEP, that I'm calling it. I know it's a long, cumbersome name. I'm going to come up with a much sexier name, but for now, that's what it is, because that's what it does. All right, so there's self-esteem, self-worth, self-concept. Then we have self-image and identity, which are basically the same thing, how you see yourself. In fact, there's three aspects to this: how you see yourself, how other people see you, and then how you perceive that other people see you. And that can be way off. Quite often people have no idea how other people see them, but they have a concept that people see them in a certain way. And then self-confidence, which is a feeling of trust in your own abilities, qualities, and judgment. And self-respect, which is a feeling that you'll behave with honor and dignity according to your definition of what those things are. All right, so let's have a look at some of the things that people say about some of these concepts. If you've done my workshops, I talk a lot about identity, which also is self-image, which is relates to self-esteem and self-concept. Zig Ziglar says you're never going to perform consistently in a manner which is inconsistent with how you see yourself. And then Robert Cialdini, a social psychologist, in his book Influence, he says the strongest force in the human personality is our need to remain consistent with how we define ourselves. Now, I've taught this stuff, but just recently I saw this when I was researching for this program, I saw this quote. I don't know how to, Iyanla Vanzant, I know she's obviously does some really great stuff. She says, everything that happens to you is a reflection of what you believe about yourself. We cannot outperform our level of self-esteem. We cannot draw to ourselves more than we think we are worth. Now, when I saw that, and then I thought about these other things that I've been teaching, I thought, hang on a minute, I'm not so sure about whether this is true, because there's a thing called imposter syndrome. And if you know anything about that, it's the kind of phenomena. It's also called the imposter phenomena. It was described by a couple of psychologists in the 1970s, and they found that as much as 2 out of 5 successful people consider themselves frauds. So technically, they have lower self-esteem, or they have an image of themselves which is lower than how they've actually performed. They've drawn to themselves more than their actual self-esteem would say that they're worthy of, and so on. So, and this actually applies to so many people, not just highly successful people. As in research, as much as 70% of people report that they have suffered from some version of feeling like an imposter at some point in their lives. Even Einstein. Get this, okay? So now this is a real quote from Einstein, apparently told to one of his close friends. It's not just, I know Einstein gets used in all these quotes on Facebook that he didn't say at all, but this one apparently he really did say. I've checked it in several sources, and he says, about a month before his death, he confided to a friend. He said, the exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me very ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler. Wow. So here's a guy who has every right to have a very inflated self-esteem, and yet he still had, doubt and imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. This is really the human condition. And, in all the countries that I've had the privilege to visit, I have seen people suffering from this particular peculiar condition. And again, in doing research for this, I found this quote on some stuff that my good mate, Dr. David Lake, my provocative partner in crime, developing the PET and also SET, he wrote this, and I thought, wow, that really just sums it up. So for those whose screens haven't caught up with this, I will keep reading these out. Someone else says, so Sue says, I've disappeared from the audio. Have I disappeared from anyone else's audio? Can you just let me know if you all, the rest of you, can still hear me, please? Just so I know it's not just, hopefully it's just Sue and you'll come back very, very quickly. So everyone else saying you can still hear me, that's great. Okay. Good to check in every now and then. In the other program I was running this morning, I actually switched it accidentally to presenter mode. I was speaking and people saying, we can't hear you. That was my fault. Okay, so, all right, so hopefully, Sue, you'll come back online shortly. Okay, so David said, few people are comfortable with themselves. Many don't really like themselves. Most have a core of self-doubt and inner criticism and secretly think they're not good enough in some areas of life, and that only parts of themselves are worthy. In our inner world, we evaluate and judge and criticize ourselves constantly, usually negatively. Man, oh man, this is so universal. Across all the world, I see people suffering from this idea of not being good enough, which seems a core component of low self-esteem. So what do we do about this? What is the solution? Well, essentially, the things that are mostly proposed in terms of this, and what I see people struggling with, is 2 main ways to try and solve this. One is to challenge your negative thoughts, defeat your inner critic. I saw a funky advertisement for young girls the other day where they're kind of yelling back and saying no to the inner critic voice, And so that's one thing that's proposed. And the other one is that you're supposed to build yourself up with positive affirmations and positive self-talk. And you know, when I asked people to write for me, one of the ladies who wrote me, who was actually in the other group, she said, you know, how do you make a sustainable improvement in your self-esteem? And you know, because low self-esteem is such a deep-rooted feeling. And what are the best top-ups? How do you top yourself up to keep your, you know, once you get that feeling of high self-esteem, how do you reinforce that feeling of high self-esteem? Okay, so let's actually have a look at this for a moment and these kinds of solutions. Number one, challenge your inner critic and your negative thoughts, and which is a component of most cognitive behavioral approaches. And number two, being positive, building yourself up with positive affirmations and self-talk. All right, well, there's one really interesting study that I saw, which was reported in Psychological Science, and they looked at people with low versus high self-esteem. And they had them make the self-statement, I am a lovable person. And they measured their mood and their momentary feelings about themselves, about self. And here's what they found. They found that the participants who had low self-esteem actually felt worse after repeating positive self-statements compared to another low self-esteem group who didn't repeat their self-statement. And the people with high self-esteem already, they did feel a bit better, but only slightly better when they were saying positive affirmations to themselves like this. And when they did a follow-up where they allowed people to list negative self-thoughts along with positive self-thoughts, the paradoxical finding was that low self-esteem participants actually had better mood responses when they were allowed to have negative thoughts than when they were asked to focus exclusively on positive thoughts. Now, anyone who knows us, who knows our PET approach, will know that fits right in with what we do. So the psychologists who did this study suggested, and this is I'm quoting this actually from the Science Daily paper where this was summarized, they suggest that like overly positive praise, unreasonably positive self-statements such as I accept myself completely can provoke contradictory thoughts in individuals with low self-esteem. Such negative thoughts can overwhelm the positive thoughts. And what this makes me think is, what does that say about setup statements in EFT for all the EFTers, where we are getting people to say, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I have this problem, I deeply and completely accept myself. And again, anyone who knows this will know that many years ago, David Lake and I found there were so many people who would have a reaction against that positive self-accepting thing that we started playing around with that. And we came up with the statement which we got them to say, exaggerating the negative, where they would say, I deeply and completely reject myself. And that was actually highly successful. And you know, this research, as well as a lot of research in neuroscience, is letting us know why. Because one of the other things that they found in research in neuroscience is that when you try not to think a negative thought, you end up thinking it more. And this comes from a guy who used to give his students the task to go away and not think of a white bear. And what they all found was that they couldn't do it. And what they were trying not to think intruded all the time. So this has been shown many, many times over now, that when you try to push a thought away, it's more likely to come into your consciousness. And so if you are trying not to be negative, you're trying not to be down on yourself, you're trying to be positive and not be negative, well, not being negative ends up actually creating more negativity in your system, and it activates the brain's stress centers. It's like you have to set up a monitor in your brain to measure every thought against to make sure that you're not thinking that one. And therefore, that means that unconsciously that has to be activated the whole time. And it causes you really to be drawn into that much, much more. And the opposing side of that, paradoxically, is that when you give yourself permission to think a thought, that reduces the likelihood that you'll end up thinking it. So observing and accepting your thoughts, and this is the key, without having to act on them or necessarily even believe them, decreases anxiety in your brain stress centers, and you end up with less anxiety. So this is the essence of what we do in our approach called acceptance tapping. And acceptance tapping is where you essentially just add tapping to the problem. Which reminds me, are you tapping? And I hope everybody is. So if you know the tapping, you should be tapping on all the points. And anybody who's not, you can just follow the points that I'm tapping right now and just tap on those with, with 2 fingers gently, and you're going to get the benefits of doing that. So in acceptance tapping, instead of setting up a fight where you're trying to tap the problem away and get rid of the negative, you're just grafting the tapping to the pattern of the problem, to the behavior of the problem, to the feeling reactions around that problem. And instead of trying to make those feelings do something, you're just tapping and noticing what they do. You're associating, you're letting your mind wander around the issues. You're letting the negatives be real, if you like, without having to believe them or salute them or act on them. And you're just focusing and paying attention to the body feelings and the mind thoughts and all of those things while you tap. All right, so what's my take on self-esteem? Well, one is that self-esteem is actually a load of BS, but it is BS, but it's your personal BS, it's your belief system, okay? There's a belief system underlying it. And the whole idea of having to raise your self-esteem locks you into a judgmental system where you have to be measured. And now you can be measured positively rather than negatively. But that just leaves you stuck in that system. At another level, self-esteem is a story. Yes, it's a story which has emotional roots, and the problem is, as long as you're attached to that story, as long as you're emotionally attached to that story, then you are stuck by it. So one aspect of my own low self-esteem story was feeling that I was always being left out, that I wasn't being considered and so on. And as long as I held on to that, I also got to hold on to all those feelings, and I also got to hold on to the negative self-esteem that was a consequence of that. The other thing I believe, and this is really key, and this relates to the other one of those, oops, trying to just go around here, just to highlight this statement. My belief is that you don't need to put something into yourself to make you okay. What you need to do is to release your attachment to all the negative BS that says you are not. So I don't think you have to build yourself up in terms of positive affirmations, and do like, I remember years ago seeing a program with, we were doing in the high schools, we actually brought in, and it was video recordings of these great personal development people, and one of them was getting kids to stand in front of a mirror and say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. And unfortunately, a lot of the research shows that when you just try and raise self-esteem like that, number one, people don't accept it. Number two, it doesn't relate to their behaviours, so they don't really make the gains that you want to make anyway. And it doesn't produce the big shifts that people thought it would make in terms of improving kids' performance and all that kind of stuff that feeling good about themselves was supposed to make them do. So since it's really your negative attachments that you need to release, this is where we come to using the tapping and also using my new intention-based approach, which I'm really excited by, and I'm really pleased by the results that people have been getting with this. And so I want to share it with you very quickly, and I want to demonstrate this to you as well as the tapping. So let me put up a quote, one of my favourite ones that I've put up quite a lot recently, from Byron Katie. If you know her seminal work is Loving What Is. Her process is inquiry. She calls it the work. And her process is based on finding the truth. And as long as you're suffering, she says, you are believing something which isn't real. And I think that's what self-esteem is, low self-esteem is. And high self-esteem, if you like, it's all part of the same thing, because you have to stay stuck, in being that. You're stuck in a positive way, I suppose, but it's still, you're stuck on a belief that you have to be evaluated, that you have to have a worth, and that your worth maybe is connected to your performance or whatever. So Byron Katie says a thought is harmless unless we believe it. It's not our thoughts, but the attachment to our thoughts that causes suffering. And it was when I read that, and also I was doing some work on myself, as some of you will know, that I realized it's actually our emotional attachments that cause the suffering. And the breakthrough for me was thinking, well, okay, releasing those emotional attachments is what the tapping does. Ultimately, you can have the thought, I'm a bad person or I'm a hopeless person. But if I said, okay, think the thought, I'm a hopeless person, to everyone in this group, only some of you are going to be attacked by that, possessed by that, emotionally upset by that. And some of you is just a thought, okay? excuse me, but maybe another thought like I'm stupid or I'm, dumb, I'm not intelligent. Maybe that one will grab you. And we each have our attachments. And yeah, they've come from significant emotional events perhaps in our lives. And the key is to release those, because then you can go into your natural state and be all that you are without having to apologize and without having to think that that's wrong and feel that that's wrong, because that's what it's really about. So the intention process was a discovery I made, that you can use intention. You can give a direct command or instruction to your subconscious mind to release emotional attachments. And ultimately, when tapping works, this is what tapping does as well. So the first intention statement is, I release all my emotional attachments to this problem, this event, this image, this belief, this thought, this person, this situation, whatever it is that you're emotionally reacting to or attached to. And the second intention statement relates to where the energy flow is disturbed. So one of the consequences of if you like, low self-esteem is that it has a feeling component, and that feeling is a disturbance in the force, a disturbance in the body. And if you didn't have that, by the way, if that wasn't activated by the thought that you are a bad person or not good enough or whatever, then it would just be a thought and it wouldn't have control over you at all. So the second intention statement is, I restore the right energy flow to this particular body area. So if it's a stomach feeling, as in the illustration here, it would be, I restore the right energy flow to my stomach. And surprise, surprise, lo and behold, this particular two-part process has been very, very effective, with or without tapping, for a lot of people, to help them to release emotional attachments and restore the body energy to flow. Two things which, by the way, I think is what's happening when we use tapping effectively. We're releasing emotional attachments and we're restoring the body energy to flow. So now what I'd like to do is to stop talking about this and start doing something with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change over to Q&A mode, question and answer mode. And that means that you can ask questions or you can volunteer. And what I'll do is I'm just going to go back to a slide here, which shows you how to do this. So if you want to ask a question, there's two ways. Number one, you can type a question or type a statement or type a reaction into the chat box. That's down the left-hand corner. A lot of you have already found that. And then above that is the attendee list. You'll notice there's no names on that because I'm letting people who want to be a little bit anonymous. And down the bottom of that is a little smiley face with a little arrow. And if you click on that, up will come a series of options, and you'll be able to raise your hand, and then you can come forward and speak to me. So I noticed Detlef's done that. So I'm going to just click to give voice to you, Detlef. And just for everyone, just so you know, once you've done that, something will come up on your computer, such as this, where you get to be able to ask a question. And it may take, it comes up in different forms on different computers, but there will be a dialog box that says, you've been chosen to ask a question, do you want to? You've got to click yes to say that, and then you'll be asked about using your computer to access. So hopefully we'll work this out. Again, that's the basic process that you will be able to ask a question if you want to. So it hasn't come through yet, let's just click on that again, just to make sure, see if it comes up on your computer. Meantime, anybody who wants to can type a question or a comment into the chat, or you can come into the queue as well to ask a question or to maybe do some work on an issue, because I want this to be a coaching thing. The last webinars I did before these self-esteem ones were more just content. And I don't like just talking all the time myself, although I love talking if it isn't obvious. What I really want to do is to have an opportunity to work with you. So, all right, so Detlef, you haven't come through yet, but Julie has come through. So I'm just going to, if it's okay with you, keep having a go, and I'm going to put you in the queue. And Julie, I'm going to give voice to you. So as soon as now, what will happen is you will, you'll have to click to say it's okay to use your microphone, Julie, and then you'll be able to come through and speak with me. And Detlef, if you don't get that thing, if it doesn't come to you, maybe you can type something in the chat for us. So we'll keep trying. So Julie, you should be through now. Are you there? Okay, now I cannot hear you, so tells me that you're there. So are you there, Julie? Ah, she's on video. Wow, okay, hello. I can see you, but I can't hear you. So you need to turn on your microphone, or there's two things. Now, I'm sorry, I can't tell you where the microphone is on your device. It is saying it is on. Okay. Oh, Detlef, you didn't raise your hand. Came up and told me that you did. Okay, Julie's just going out and coming back in again. Sometimes the technology is a bit of a challenge. Do you have a headset or a microphone, Julie? Okay, you didn't listen when I said you need to use a headset when you need to speak with me, did you? Unfortunately, I can't read lips. One of the great challenges of using technology. So, yeah, I think you're going to try and find a different mic. Yeah, if you can do that. Meantime, if there's anybody else, just raise your hand and let me know that you want to speak. So I'll go back to that how to ask a question box and just click down the bottom left-hand corner of the attendee list, which is in the left-hand side of the screen, and raise your hand and hopefully speak to me. So yeah, apart from doing charades, I'm not sure how we can help. Unless you can type really fast. Yeah. So what I might do, Julie, if it's okay, everybody, by the way, if you're all tapping, then even while we're waiting for the technology or the systems to work for us and stuff like that, then you're going to be getting the benefits of tapping into your system. But yeah, I am hoping that I'll be able to do some live coaching with someone so that we can, yeah, so Detlef says, I like the quote very much, especially integrating the body. Well, yeah, of course, when we have any challenge, it's happening in the body. And, you know, when you talk about your subconscious mind, this is it. You know, your body is your subconscious mind. And again, if you don't have a body reaction, now not everybody's aware of feelings in their body, just as when you do tapping, some people are not aware of what's happening in their body, but the tapping helps to integrate and to harmonize the feelings that are in the body. You are speaking and I'm hearing you.
Yay!
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
All right, persistence pays off. So what we might do just for a sec, Julie, we're just going to change this here. Just change our layout a little bit, just so that people can see us a little bit easier. How's that?
That's
okay.
Good. That's good.
All right. So what do you want to, what's the issue? What's the challenge? What's the thing for you in relationship to self-esteem?
The challenge is the whole thing. I've been working on myself with various modalities for years, and I still don't feel I'm getting fundamentally anywhere at all. And I
Okay, and you're not tapping at the moment, are you?
Sorry?
You are not tapping at the moment, are you?
No.
So you started talking about it and you're just losing energy, right? Okay, it's kind of like that down on yourself. This is the kind of consequence of this stuff. And so you've got down on yourself, you've kind of beaten yourself a little bit, but you need to be doing the tapping right when you're tuned into that.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the first thing.
One of the issues I have is I definitely have a belief that this works on everybody apart from myself.
Okay. All right, so let's start with that. And when we're using the intention approach, first of all, you can do tapping on that. You know, you can tap on that. You can focus on the belief. You can focus on the feeling consequence of the belief. You can ask yourself, where did I learn this, and all that kind of stuff. And you can do all those things with the intention process as well. But what I want you to do is let's just start with that belief and just say it again. What's the belief?
I don't believe it's going to work. I believe it will work on everyone else, but apart from myself.
Okay. And when you say that, I want you to notice the consequences of that belief. So just think that, or say it again. Just notice the consequences of that belief.
I think this is going to work on everyone apart from myself. And it just feels like everything just drops down.
Yeah,
Can
so
I
it's
say that?
lowering and it's draining of your energy. Okay, so just say this, just say, I release all my emotional attachments
I release all my emotional attachments.
to this is going to work for everyone else, but not for me.
This is going to work for everyone else and not for me.
And don't try and do anything with that. Just let that percolate for a moment and see what happens. Okay? So what we're doing here, we're simply taking the belief as it is, as a statement, and we are adding the intention statement to that. So we're saying, I release all my emotional attachments to, and then just stating the belief. Okay? So what comes up for you right now with that? Or what did you notice?
I actually noticed it almost like I dropped into a slightly sort of neutral space.
Yeah.
It felt like there was a bit of expansion.
Yeah. And the other thing we did was there was a breath there, okay? And this is very, very common when you do tapping, when energy starts to move. And what happens with these intention statements is that I found that that happens very, very quickly when you have the right target. So when you have a target that has an emotional value and you apply this to it, it quite often will lead to a shift. So just go back to that belief again. This will work for everyone else, it won't work for me.
This will work for everyone else, but it won't work for me.
And just notice what it does.
It didn't drop. There was no kind of drop with it.
Okay.
It was more a
All
sort
right.
of, there was a little bit of curiosity of, well, it might work.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, it might work, but not for me. So there's kind of a slight opening, right?
Yeah.
So this has
Just
just got a
considering
number of,
opening.
yeah. So this has got a number of hooks in you, this obviously.
Yeah.
And this is because it also relates to this general underlying thing of I don't know, what is it? A general sense of not being uh, something or not having something or whatever it is. What would you call your worst?
I mean, this in a nutshell, this comes from 20 years of experience of things not working for me. So
Beautiful.
there's a lot
Okay.
of references, and it's an overwhelming, well, how do I sort it? And I think I'm getting to the stage where I have to just get to this acceptance place rather than
Yeah.
trying to
Well,
sort
but
things.
yeah, to you, acceptance is actually giving up. See, so that's one of the challenges as well. So acceptance
Yeah,
isn't giving up at all, actually,
yeah.
and that's not a real acceptance. So that's why you're fighting it, of course. Okay.
Mhm.
So 20 years of what? 20 years of
Trying this, trying that, trying everything, and still perceiving a lot of limitations in my life because of physical and
okay.
emotional challenges.
Okay, so this is a global thing at the moment. Just say I release all my emotional attachments
I release all my emotional attachments
to my 20 years of limitations.
to my 20 years of limitations.
Hmm. And just notice what comes up now. So you notice she actually has dropped down into that, and there's maybe, I don't know, some more specific aspects coming up, maybe your thoughts or feelings.
Um, feel my energy drop too much. It was almost like it stayed there, but it moved. It was almost like it moved sideways into sadness.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So yeah, so this is what a poignant story does, and this is how we're attached to the poignant story because we can look at that and feel sad, see? So it's a beautiful thing, but it actually also keeps us stuck because we're stuck on the story. And I'm not saying it isn't sad here. This is really important, okay? But as long as you're attached to that, the sadness of your poignant story, you stay stuck in that, you know, because the past is the future. Just try this, just say I release all my emotional attachments
I release all my emotional attachments.
to that 20 years defines my future.
That 20 years defines my future. That's a good one.
So again, anyone who does tapping, you know these are the signs of energy moving. But what you notice with this is that it actually goes to that quite quickly. Sometimes I would find that you might have to do a number of rounds to get that to happen. Whereas when you get a good target with this, you can just use the intention statements on it.
That was a spot on one, because it does feel that how do I create a better future when the experience for 20 years has been not ideal?
Well, actually, as long as you are stuck back there, you can't.
Yeah.
But if that's in the past, then who knows? See? But the problem is it's not in the past, because the past is still present in your system and you're still feeling it, some of it as if you're still there. Okay? So here, I'm going to just give you a bonus statement that I've used with some people. Okay? I just want you to look for a moment at that 20 years of experiences of failures and false starts and whatever it is. And just say, I put this all into the past.
I put this all into the past.
Where it actually happened.
Where it actually happened.
The cat's doing the dual therapy. Slight pattern interruption. Cat tail therapy.
Yeah, no, she's brilliant at pattern interruption.
She's just a delightful distraction. So yeah. Okay, so tell me what that's doing now and what you notice. Obviously, you know, we've had the cat distraction, but hey, it's all right. We'll take whatever we can get.
Give me 1 second. I've got to put something in a drawer so she doesn't get it.
This cat has that "I will not be denied" kind of quality. It's got to be a male cat. It's a she. Did you say she?
She, yeah. All my tapping friends know her well.
Okay. All right. Well, we've just been introduced as well. Okay. So go back. You've got 20 years of references. Proving that you can't go anywhere from here.
It's more neutral. There's still something there, but it's.
Yeah. So ultimately, there are 20 years of things, and some of those are going to have strong value, and so you want to go back and do some more treatments on those. But I'm curious, as you think about that, whatever the negative feeling is, are you aware of where it is in your body? I notice I have my British accent, by the way. Just went a little bit Indian for a moment.
It feels like it's like a sinking thing in my throat, and it's also in the heart. It's just that area is just kind of like.
Okay, so just say this. Just say, I restore the right energy flow to my throat.
I restore the right energy flow to my throat.
And say, I restore the right energy flow to my heart.
I restore the right energy flow to my heart.
Wow.
I'm a burper when energy really moves.
Yeah, okay. So there's...
It was interesting because as I said it, I was actually getting pain between my shoulder blades and in my back, which is one of the regions that's been hurting since 1991.
Yeah, okay. So this is kind of somewhere where you kind of, in that particular, the chakra people would be so interested in that heart chakra and the back in that kind of area there. So Steph says curious as to why you added it in the heart. Well, first of all, I thought about the heart when Julie was mentioning before about sadness. So, you know, it's quite often where people experience this. But also when Julie was describing it, she said in the throat and going down into the heart. So I thought I would do that. Now this particular intention statement where you use the I restore the right energy flow to this particular area, that one on its own doesn't always, it doesn't always open up and allow you to do that unless you've done enough work on the releasing beforehand. Okay? So sometimes you'll just have a feeling in your heart or your chest or your stomach or your diaphragm, and you'll say, oh, I restore the right energy flow to my diaphragm, and you go, ah, and it feels really good. And other times you go, I restore the right energy flow to my diaphragm, and it just doesn't feel like it shifts. And that's because that's a feeling which is being triggered by something or which is attached to something. And so you want to find the target to release it. But sometimes you can just use that statement and it works really well.
So would you keep repeating the release one until you really feel that you're in a good neutral space, and then you go for the restoring the energy flow to that area?
Well, you can play around with this, but what I found is that 9 times out of 10 I would use, or 19 times out of 20 I would use the releasing statement, and 1 time out of 20 I would use the restoring energy flow statement. This is, by the way, what tapping does. It releases emotional attachments, it restores energy flow, but you can also do it directly with these particular things. And you can apply it to everything, even if you don't know what it is that's triggering you, and just follow what comes next. Okay? So a couple of questions down here. Let's say about the body again. Feelings of the body are a strong indication of where the energy disturbance is locating. So repairing there makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and restoring flow basically, because it's a disturbance in flow that's been caused by this resistance or this attachment or whatever you want to call it. Gary says, what fills the vacuum when you release the emotion? Well, this is some concept people have about there being a vacuum. Actually, I believe your life energy is meant to flow, and what happens when you release a stopper is that energy starts to flow. And so, So, it's not a vacuum. And a label, by the way, a self-accepting label. No, actually, a label, any label, is an attachment, and I'm interested in what we attach to it. Steph says, I find if it doesn't shift in the body, I ask the question either the body or the higher self, whatever you want to say, what is this about? And whatever thoughts or feelings come up and can then be tapped on. Yes, that approach works really well, but it tends to work best for people who are more auditory in their approach. The other thing is, if you have a feeling in the body, you can just put your attention on that feeling and just tap and just notice what it does, and allow it to express however it wants to express, and then just notice where it goes from that. So just come back to your, your problem. We don't want to fix you too soon, and just, just think, okay, I've got 20 years of stuff, and this works for everyone else and doesn't work for me, and just tune into that, focus on that. Let me know what happens.
There's actually a mild bit of fear coming up. In my sort of references, it's almost like Triple Warmer is starting to react and go, oh my God, she's changing something.
Okay. And by the way, are you tapping?
No.
It doesn't work unless you use it. And if you don't use it, it won't work. Okay? So that's that's one thing, Steph says naughty Julie. Yeah, of course it's naughty Julie. That's another part of your self.
So I'm going to release any attachment to that stuff.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to be stuck, actually, but you're stuck on being free. So just say, I release all my emotional attachments.
I release all my emotional attachments.
To not being stuck.
To not being stuck.
So this is, so Helen says, could it be excitement and not fear? Well, it could actually be both, but fear is still fear, okay? So this also might be a fear of changing things, or a fear of getting them wrong, or who knows what, okay? At the moment, we just have fear, so we have to kind of explore that, all right? Now, let's do one more of these. We don't have time to, to do everything. But maybe we can fix one of your major life issues in the next 60 seconds. Let's just see.
I'll look into that.
Where's the fear?
It's solar plexus and coming up. It's almost like something is trying to come boom.
Okay, all right. So Willem Lammers has his own approach, which I really love. It's called logosynthesis. And he also uses intention to retrieve energy that's blocked and or that's split off, and also to remove energy that's not yours. And he says, you know, you should never apply that to the feeling because the feeling is a consequence. But what I've noticed is that people can also have emotional attachments to feelings. So they have, for example, they have fear of fear, okay? And therefore they don't allow that to flow. So just say, I release all my emotional attachments to fear.
I release all my emotional attachments to fear.
All right,
That
well,
one
that's
hits
something.
that one. This actually all started with panic disorder, which started in 1990, and I know that's what led to all the physical things as well.
Oh, yeah. And because, of course, anybody who's suffered anything like that knows that the worst feeling in the world is to go into panic, and so you want to do anything not to feel it. And so the fear of the fear absolutely possesses, you know, takes things over to the point where you end up shutting down whole chunks of your life, you know. This is what anxiety does. It loves to attach itself and to shut things down, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
did a good job with me.
Yeah, well, you're just trying to handle a difficult situation, okay? Now, I don't want to excuse you, by the way. I know that you should be beaten up for this and you should be hung, drawn, and quartered. You know, I know that's what should be happening. Helen says, "I'm pleased you mentioned logosynthesis." Yeah, what I'm actually using is certainly similar in some ways to logosynthesis. It's just my own version of that because it's not about, you know. Although I still use, by the way, I'll just mention as an aside, I still use the statement of removing non-me energy when people have been affected by the energy of other people or things. I still use that one. And the logosynthesis is a fantastic technique in its own right, and I highly recommend you going and looking at it. So meanwhile, while we've been saying that, what's happening with you?
It's calming down a bit. It's quite rare for me to actually get really triggered when tapping because it's almost like the barriers are up so much to not go there that I can, you know, lead people around the houses quite easily. So it's quite interesting for it to just absolutely hit the spot like that.
Well, I have a ninth Dan black belt in provoking people's issues, so you know. Okay. So, where's the feeling right now?
It's here.
Is that like stomach?
It's moving around. Solar plexus.
Solar plexus. Just say I restore the right energy flow to the solar plexus.
I restore the right energy flow to the solar plexus. Doing something.
Yeah, so as anybody who's observing can see, there's a whole lot of signs of energy moving and shifting. So apart from the yawning and the sighing and the shaking around and the burping and stuff like that, so yeah, we're having a whole lot of signs that things are moving. And movement is good, you know. It's stuckness that's the problem.
It's almost like recalibration going on.
Yes. When you're stuck in only one perspective, which is what this 20-year thing has done, it's kind of stuck you in in a mold and a bunch of BS. And when you tune into it, you got one consequence, which is dragging you down, you know. So this is your version of low self-esteem, is a dragging down feeling caused by hooking into those beliefs. And so I'm going to be curious if you just give this a go over the next few days. And if you wouldn't mind doing that and write to us, and if you're okay about letting people know, I'd love that, because people attend these things and they want to find out what happens. So yeah, just try it willy-nilly on whatever comes up. And sometimes you'll feel a release, and sometimes you'll need to go to another aspect and try it on that and see what happens, yeah?
Yeah, it fits perfectly with where I, kind of the conclusion I was starting to come to from 20 years of searching, was actually ending the fight with the issue rather than trying to solve the issue. There's some kind of acceptance needed.
Yeah,
So
but true acceptance doesn't still wear you down, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And true acceptance doesn't disempower. True acceptance doesn't disempower. It actually allows things to move. So first of all, you accept where you are, then you can go from there to where you need to go. So all right, I'm going to have to pause here. So I'm just going to take voice back. Thank you for working with me. Keep tapping.
Thank you. Will do.
Okay. So let me just come back here now, and we'll just switch back around to this layout. So thank you so much, Julie, for volunteering. And I was hopeful we'd be able to work with some more people, but as always, this is such a short time, 60 minutes. So let me just tell you what I think. I don't think that we really need self-esteem as in to build ourselves up. What I think we really need is self-acceptance. And that is acceptance of all parts of ourselves. And it includes accepting all the good parts, as well as all the so-called bad parts, because the bad parts we've set up a kind of a resistance to. And Carl Rogers says something which is true about acceptance, which is that it's a strange paradox that when you accept yourself as you are, then you can change. He also says, what I am is good enough if I would only be it openly. Oh my goodness, if everybody over the world was able to let go of the mask that we hold up to the world to try and shield these things that we think are only about us, then we'd see that they're also about other people, and everybody's got this, and it's part of the human condition. And we could come together and help each other to heal from this ridiculous BS. Carl Jung says some of the same things. He says, we can't change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. Now, when we have this guilt after we do the bad thing, guilt is actually part of the problem. It just continues the problem. And so the challenge is to accept yourself, and yet we are terrified about accepting ourselves. You know, I'm thinking of Marianne Williamson's statement about it's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And so, believe it or not, when you are able to go to the dark and release that, what emerges is all the other stuff that you've really been disowning and pushing away. Our light. Detlef says, good and bad are nothing but judgments made up by the mind. Absolutely. But sometimes they get hardwired into our nervous system by things that have happened to us. And you know, when people have extremely painful, both physically and emotionally painful experiences, particularly when they're too young to be able to understand these in perspective, or they're overwhelmed by them, or they're really life-threatening events, then you can come up with things that have strong emotional and physiological consequences that link into those concepts. And so the concept gets attached to that particular feeling and experience. And of course, our job is to liberate ourselves from that and to help to liberate others. Because ultimately, this is where we're heading. And I just love this quote by Rumi. Out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. And so it's my fond hope that you'll be able to use these techniques to release some of the BS that's stopping you from being who you really are, and from realizing that, hey, we're all the same. As my great mentor, Frank Farrelly, always said, you know, what's most universal, what's most personal is most universal. Now, obviously I want to leave you with something. What can you do? What can you do? One thing you can do is do the tapping. The other thing is you can go and apply this intention process. Even without knowing it, you can do like blunderbuss approach and you can get good results for it. Some of you already know I have a self-acceptance program that I offer. I want to offer you a special deal on that because you've been part of this program for me. And so I'm going to give you, if you want it, 50% off that program, which is an absolute steal already. It's a 30-day self-acceptance program which I put together based on my own experience of doing tapping for 30 days on my own lack of self-acceptance. It includes 30 days of not just tips. You know, my wife says, oh, you're devaluing it by calling it tips. There's actually, I'm sending you real things that you can do every day for 30 days. And I've had a lot of people have really good results from using that process. There's also a 4-part audio series of recordings that I did with Jessica Ortner, originally for their Tapping Insiders Club. And there's also some recordings from a 4-part teleclass series where I work with people and do tapping with them on self-acceptance issues. That program is worth $235. It normally sells for $99. For the next 3 days, our operators are standing by. I'm offering it to you for $49.50 Australian dollars, which in euros is virtually nothing. In pounds, it's even less. I don't know what it converts to. By the way, international purchases, you don't even have to pay Australian tax, so you get that offered as well. And here's the key, and some people from the other group are having trouble getting this. Where you get it is at this link, or the first one here or the second one. But when you get through to the shop and you go to check out, that's when you have to put in the coupon code, which is the word acceptance. And when you do that, then you'll have your program reduced by 50%, and you get it for $49.50 or less tax, and converted to euros and pounds, it's nothing virtually. So this is the links, and you will, for those of you who are on the program, you'll go to this automatically. For anyone who's just watching the recording, then what you want to do is you want to go directly to these pages. The long version is EFTdownunder.com/self-acceptance-30- / the shorter version is EFTdownunder.com/P=3093. You can also get this by going to the events page, and on that main listing, the 30-day home study self-acceptance program is on there. Basically, the next 3 days until Easter here, until I go away for Easter with my wife, going off with my wife and Dave Lake and his wife, and yeah, we're going to have some fun times away. You can get that up until midnight on Thursday, West Australia time. Put in the coupon code acceptance and you'll get that. So thank you so much for joining in. I hope that you found this helpful. I hope you go away and do some more tapping on the stuff that would have come up. Thank you so much for Julie for volunteering, and everybody else. Hopefully you've borrowed some benefits from that. If you've been tapping the whole time, I know you got some good stuff from doing that. I hope you find these tips useful and give that little intention process a go. Thanks, Helen. I will say hi to David, absolutely. I was talking to him today, only today. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, other Helen 1, and Eric. Yeah, good to see you here, Eric. I hope to catch up with you soon. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Anand. All right, I better turn off this recording, and then I'll keep saying thank you to everybody who's here. Otherwise, the people who listen on all the recording. Thanks, Patricia.